welcome into the show today. Thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. This podcast prides itself on being 100% honest 100% of the time with a touch of sarcasm. And while you're here, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify, or wherever you're making this podcast a part of your day. I do appreciate it. A lot of Minnesota Vikings stories to dive into today as the Sam Darnold reporting continues to be off the charts and a little crazy. And just a few minutes ago, there was a breaking Minnesota Vikings story that is going to shake up the Vikings roster a lot. So we'll dive into that too. Sam Darnold and the Vikings reports surrounding Sam Darnold. Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, Peter Schrager, Mike Garafolo, Jordan Schultz, all of the big boys are practically reporting the same thing. If the Vikings and Sam Darnold can agree to a number, the Vikings want Darnold back for another season. And that makes sense. 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, was in the MVP conversation until the final 2 weeks of the season, was never going to win MVP, but he was at least in the top 5 conversation of being MVP. And on this show, the topic will revolve around Sam Darnold. But the specific topic that revolves around Sam Darnold really deals with the Vikings and their top 10 selected draft pick, McCarthy. Because right now, the topic is Darnold this, Darnold that, Darnold this, Darnold that. And O'Connell's being asked J.J. McCarthy questions too. Like, what do you think of the guy? How's his recovery going? Will he be ready by OTAs? All that kind of nonsense. But with this speculation and reporting from the big boys, okay, this is coming from the top dogs of NFL reporters. It means something. It's not just some random guy trying to make some noise as a reporter, trying to sell himself and, look what I can do. Look at throwing out crap and hopefully it sticks and then he can call himself a legit reporter. This stuff is coming from the Rappaports, the Schefters, and they can't just throw stuff out there and hope it sticks because this would severely damage their reputation. So you listen to these guys talk, and what they say is that they really only report about 3 to 4% of what they actually know. And the reason why is because if they reported everything and it was wrong, it would severely damage their reputation. So the fact that they're reporting so consistently that Sam Darnold and the Vikings are trying to come to a contract agreement on a 1 or 2 year deal means that there are legit conversations happening behind the scenes with Darnold and the Vikings. But I think a bigger question needs to be asked because of the Darnold and Vikings negotiations. And the question is, do the Minnesota Vikings fully trust J.J. McCarthy to step in and be a quarterback like Sam Darnold was in his first season with the Vikings? Because I think it's a fair question to ask if McCarthy could produce 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions at the peak of his career. Those are legitimate NFL numbers. And if you bring Darnold back, maybe it's a quarterback competition between McCarthy and Darnold, and maybe McCarthy wins the job. But if you were so sure about McCarthy, then why are the Vikings in contract negotiations with Darnold? They're never going to come out and say that we have doubts about McCarthy. They're never going to come out and say we have hesitancies about McCarthy's knee surgery and the long-term ramifications of that. They're never going to come out and say, we screwed up the top 10 pick. But what they could do and what they are saying right now while they are negotiating with Darnold is that they are not 100% confident McCarthy is ready to be the guy next season for the Vikings. What they are telling us subliminally, without actually telling us, is that the Vikings do not fully trust McCarthy to step in as QB1 next season. That's what they're telling us. You can poo-poo it all you want. You can try to, pretend that they're not. But if you are being 100% objective and you're looking at the Vikings and their negotiations and their discussions with Darnold and his agency, and they have all this cap space, and now they're trying to bring Darnold back when they have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract which they've been working through for years. What the Vikings are telling us is that they are unsure if McCarthy's performance against the Raiders in preseason game number 1 was something that he can build off of for an NFL regular season, at least next season. Maybe they believe he'll be ready in 2 years, 3 years, or whatever the case may be. But the fact that they think McCarthy and Darnold should have a quarterback competition this offseason, if they can indeed bring Darnold back at the number, then the Vikings are telling us they do not fully trust J.J. McCarthy at this point in time to be QB1. I already can hear the reactions to this podcast via social media reels and comments. Oh, this guy's an idiot. This guy's dumb. Oh, this guy recording in your mom's basement. Oh, the Hot Pockets are incredible. Free rent, Hot Pockets for my mom and dad upstairs. They're putting into the microwave right now so I can go upstairs and be ready to go. Ham and cheese. I mean, who's going to pass up that opportunity? I can already see the comments. Get out of your mother's basement. Get a real job. Blah, blah, blah. But I think it's a fair question to ask that the Vikings would never answer. But our job as podcasters or fans or objective people in general is to take a look at what the Vikings are saying, what they're doing, and figure out what they mean by what they're saying and what they're doing. And what they mean right now, what they are telling us about J.J. McCarthy is that they do not fully trust him yet. Or his knee injury or something about it. If they are in talks with Sam Darnold to try to bring him back, what else would it mean? If you felt so good about McCarthy, then why are you in a discussion with Darnold to bring him back on a 1 or 2 year deal? What's the point of sacrificing $20 to $30 million if McCarthy is going to be the guy and then he's just going to be the backup? When he could use that money on an offensive lineman or a secondary or a running back? There is something behind the scenes that the Vikings are not telling you. But based on their decision-making and their contract negotiations, they are telling us. And it's quite clear. They are unsure about J.J. McCarthy being QB1 next season. All right. Next topic, real quick. The Vikings, just a few minutes ago, came to an agreement with Theo Jackson, a contract extension. He is entering this offseason as a restricted free agent, and they came to terms on a 2-year, $12.5 million extension through 2027, with the first 2 years fully guaranteed at signing. Theo Jackson, 26 years old, and played a few snaps last year. I think he had an interception. But what this signing signifies is that Cam Bynum or Harrison Smith or both will not be back on the Minnesota Vikings roster next season. Cam Bynum is testing free agency and figuring out what that market is. And he's probably a guy that will get pretty big bucks this summer because of the performance that he put on the field last year. And Harrison Smith, who knows if he's going to retire? Reports kind of go back and forth. But what this indicates is that the Vikings think Cam Bynum is probably not back next season. So that is going to be a major shift defensively and in the Vikings defensive celebrations. Okay. Just wanted to touch on that one real quick. The next topic that I want to talk about, and this is going to be the last one. My Hot Pocket's almost ready. The Gophers basketball program lost to the Wisconsin Badgers last night at the Barn, Williams Arena, by like 7 points. And it was a competitive game in the second half. The Gophers had the lead at 1 point. They're down by 3 with about 3 minutes left. And they couldn't knock down a free throw down the stretch, and the Badgers were almost perfect from the line. And when you're the Gophers versus the Badgers in that situation, it could happen. But what needs to happen is you need to have a margin of error that is almost zero, because the Badgers are known for not beating themselves. They're a good roster with a good coach, and they're always a good program. So the Gophers were going to have to take it away from the Badgers if they wanted to win that game. The Badgers were not going to hand the Gophers that game. But the bigger story in this matchup between the Gophers and the Badgers, the border battle, is that it has been 9 years, not 9 years, but it has been 9 matchups now that the Gophers have lost in a row against the Badgers. It's been 1,855 days since the Gophers beat the Badgers, since 2020 pre-COVID. It's a long time. It's been 5 years, 9 matchups. The Gophers cannot beat the Badgers. And every year, you look at the Wisconsin Badgers roster. And here's a guy from Prior Lake. Here's a guy from Litchfield. Here's a guy from Minneapolis starting for the Badgers. These guys did not grow up Wisconsin Badgers fans. These guys did not grow up going to Madison and supporting the red and white Wisconsin Badgers. These guys aren't bleeding red. What is happening is that the Wisconsin Badgers in Madison, Wisconsin, is a much more intriguing place to play than Minnesota. Regardless of head coach, you cannot blame Ben Johnson for Minnesota high school athletes going to Wisconsin and playing for the Badgers. Because it seems like it's been happening for the last 15 years. The Minnesota High School Basketball Association has become a farm system for the Wisconsin Badgers. They just pluck and pluck and pluck and pluck. The movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt, the manager of the Oakland A's, and the New York Yankees pry away Jason Giambi. The best Boston Red Sox pry away Johnny Damon. And Brad Pitt's character goes on the movie and practically says, we are a farm system for the rich. And that's what the Minnesota High School Basketball Association is for the Wisconsin Badgers. They come into our state, they recruit them, they have better facilities, they're a more attractive place to play. I mean, why in the world? Just think about it. There is no reason whatsoever why the Minnesota Gophers program should not be as enticing or as promising as the Wisconsin Badgers program. What's the difference? Both Midwest schools. It's not like Wisconsin Badgers program is in the midst of a big city and they live this glamorous life. They have better facilities. They have better situations there. And the thing holding back the Minnesota Gophers program, and it will be like this until something dramatically changes, is the barn. Williams Arena. 15, 16, 17-year-old kids don't grow up wishing to play at the barn. Especially now, it's just getting worse because nobody goes to the games. It's empty arenas for the most part. And nobody dreams to play on a risen floor at Williams Arena. It's not a dream anymore. And as much as the boosters and this athletic director of Minnesota Gophers sports wants it to be about the barn is holding back the program more than anything else. More than the head coach. Head coaches are going to cycle through every 3 to 4 years and get fired because they can't get the right recruits because nobody wants to play in Minnesota. It's a thing of the past. It's like baseball never bringing in a shot clock. And then they finally did, and it's a great change. It's like golf never instituting a shot clock because it's got to be like the 1920s. The Gophers are behind the times. They're not updated. They're boring. Williams Arena, big deal. That was cool for our mothers and daughters. Mothers and daughters.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
That was really cool for our mothers and fathers and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. It's not cool anymore. Nobody dreams to play there. And the reason why so many athletes leave for Wisconsin is because their pitch is better. You walk into a high school kid's house, what do you say for a Minnesota Gopher program? What is your pitch? Oh, you can live close to mom and dad and they can come and visit you every weekend. What? They don't want that. Oh yeah, play on this floor that Bobby Jackson played on. Play on this floor that Kevin McHale played on. Who's Kevin McHale? Oh my gosh, it's a problem that is so obvious, and it is the elephant in the room. Yet at the same time, they don't want to address it. They're just going to sit there until it becomes like the Metrodome and it just collapses, and then you got to do something about it. That is just unbelievable. Gophers have not beaten the Badgers in 1,855 days. And the Badgers are beating Minnesota, and they have always beaten Minnesota with Minnesota recruits. It's ridiculous. All right. Thank you for watching the show, and thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you. Thank you for listening, and tell your friends.